Hi, I'm Colin Sutherland, Executive Vice President at Geotab, and welcome to Connected with Geotab, where I'll be interviewing executive guests on trending topics in our fleet management world. Our goal with the podcast is to create a connected community where listeners can locate a variety of topics and connect ideas for this fast-paced business climate that we're in today. Each episode will feature a different thought leader sharing their expertise. And today, we're very fortunate to have with us Neil Cawse, Geotab CEO. Neil, welcome.
Thank you, Colin. Very happy to be here.
We've had a long-time relationship together, and probably no more challenging a time in the last couple of months. So I'm just kind of curious, from your perspective, being really, really fresh in the moment, how has work shifted at Geotab? What has the last couple of months meant for you and Geotab as a business?
Yeah, so I mean, it doesn't need to be said that COVID has had a dramatic impact on everybody's lives, business. Certainly when we reflect back in the early days of COVID, we were very uncertain as to, what the ultimate outcome would be. How long is this going to last? How's it going to impact business? What's going to happen to the company? We're going to be severely affected. What is going to happen to the staff members? And there's still a lot of uncertainty. I mean, if you think about where we are now, kind of 3 months in, we still don't have a lot of those answers. So we still, at least we're feeling a bit more comfortable about the situation we're in. But, so the interesting thing is kind of reflecting back on how things changed. I mean, you can imagine everybody had the chaos when this first started happening and lockdown was happening. First worry is the health of the company, right? So you want to worry about, like, do we have enough cash? What's happening, to pay the salaries? What's going to happen to all our customers? Are they going to pay us? And if they don't pay us, how are we going to pay salaries? And you make sure that you shore yourself up. You have enough cash on hand. You start talking to everybody, making sure that they're okay. The next attention turns to staff. I mean, everybody's working from home. Are they okay at home? Is it working okay, all right? How's productivity happening? We're very lucky as an organization in that we really are cloud first. So there's no systems that we have, for example, that are on-prem. Everything is in the cloud. And it was almost something that goes back to our last office move where, we were not the best experts at predicting when the building would be ready. Let's just say that. And we ended up having to work in a distributed fashion for 3 months or so. And so we got very good at working from home. Like you didn't have to be in the office. And that helped us kind of steer us towards being able to adapt well on the COVID front. And luckily, so far, our resellers haven't been hurt too badly. Many of our customers, other than some of the ones that have declared bankruptcy. But other than those customers, many of the customers seem to be fine so far, but it is still early days. But yeah, I mean, it's been an incredible, strange time to go through all of this, certainly a once in a lifetime event. And I think the ramifications of all of this are going to be felt, in business, let alone personally, for a very, very long time.
Indeed. One of the things that I know that you're very proud about is how Geotab as a company has grown on the back of data and dog fooding. So when we say, data science is important and big data is important, maybe you could just reflect on a couple of things. One would be, how is Geotab as a company managing its own business using data? And then how do you feel that team that manages that data has kind of come through in the last 60 days and maybe sharing some of our data insights to the world?
Yeah. So, you hit the nail on the head. Our philosophy at Geotab is kind of management by measurement, right? So we say that if you're not measuring something, you can't manage it properly. And if you think about the telematics device in the vehicle, it's measuring what are your vehicles doing, how they're operating, what are the people that are driving the vehicles doing. And that generates a lot of data. And the insights that we need to provide to our customers are insights that come from that data. And it taught us a long time ago that, hold on, you can't be selling something to customers saying, data is, the thing that needs to drive decisions in the organization when you yourself are not completely invested in what data means and how data is going to change your own organization. And so a long time ago, we started our data science team. Very small in the early days, a couple of people, whose goal in life, and it was really on faith, was to gather as much data as the organization generates and make sure we put it into a place where we can analyze it. So you need to gather, data out of Salesforce, like what kind of sales activity are we having, out of our systems, our ERP systems, so to pull the data out that says, this is what we're billing. Our support systems, this is where we're doing support calls and these are the issues we're having. Out of our the data that gets generated from our devices needs to go into those systems, things that are going wrong in the devices, things that track where the devices are. And nevertheless, we put that together, and it was largely, a leap of faith in that we knew there were going to be some insights. We didn't know what they were, but we thought this has got to help. Like, it just makes sense. So we did that. And today, every system that our company has, we ingest that data, and we're able to tear that data apart and compare, sales by region, by type, by, support call, by systems failing, opportunity, and generate incredible insights to run our business better. And at Geotab, we take it so seriously that we have these dashboards up that we've placed all over the company. So if you come into, for example, the Oakville office or any of the offices, you'll see these massive screens up where we put up the things that are the most important to the business and make sure that those are front and center to everybody who sees them. They're completely live. So when you walk into Geotab, you will see that we have 2.1 million connected vehicles, and you will see the number of vehicles connected this second, and you'll see the systems in operation, like a massive machine, almost like, a SpaceX launch. And I only mention that because it's kind of very topical at the moment, the folks that are going up to the International Space Station, hopefully on Saturday. But that really is what it feels like. And so you can see the inner workings of the machine happening, and you can see where things go wrong, and you can see people jumping on it. And the visibility is what's just really amazing. And obviously when COVID hits, we very, very sensitive to people's privacy. I think that is important. One, we don't deal directly with end customers. So we have partners that are the resellers that really work directly to sell to the customer. So, there's a large element of trust. And in addition, we have a huge reputation to protect. And Geotab, will not compromise in terms of people's privacy. Now, at the same time, we looked at what was happening with COVID, and we said, what is it that we can do? How can we try and shine a light on, what is happening in the economy? Where is the economy fading? Where is it recovering? How are goods being moved around? And the data science team really rose to the occasion. They got involved. The first thing that we had to do, and we hadn't really done a good job of this before, was to take each individual customer and start breaking them down into the industry in which they belong. So before, we could just see customers as customers. Now we can start looking at them as industries, and we can say, let's look at the construction industry. Let's look at food and bev. Let's look at the shipping industry. And so that we can look at these industries separate from the customers. And so the team went and put that together on short order. It was literally happening as COVID hits, and that's why we were a little slow off the mark, built that database up. And then the big data science team, which is large now. I mean, I think we're up to 54 people that are just in the data science department. That's not the number of people that do data science at Geotab. There's an enormous number of people that do data science that are just on this kind of customer-centric data science departments. And they went in and they literally tore the data apart, and they looked at some very interesting stats. So we could, for example, see what is happening with border trade, right? Is the border trade slowing? Is it stopping? Is it stopping in certain areas? We looked at cross-state trade. So how much, has this impacted, the trade between Michigan and Illinois, for example? We looked at ports. So how many goods are arriving at those ports? Because goods arrive at the ports, and sure, we don't have tracking devices on the goods arriving at the ports, but in order to move those goods to customers, you need to have trucks that pick them up. And so we have visibility as to what's happening in the ports. And then overall activity as well, like literally going week by week and seeing, okay, what is happening with kind of, the business? What is happening with people going, the economy is recovering, so therefore I'm starting to buy again, and tracking that, week by week, day by day, seeing where the hotspots are and kind of illuminating that. And so we got our COVID dashboard. We partnered with many different companies, like Deloitte and others, where we're helping them, provide them some data. We've partnered with one of our competitors, Webfleet in Europe, to basically come up with a combined world dashboard, so that we can collaborate, because we feel like this is really about in the common interest, right? This is not about, oh, well, Geotab, you're so wonderful. Look at the data that you have. That is really not the intention here. The intention here is, what can we do to shine a light for authorities to know, how is the economy rebuilding? Where should they put more stimulus? Where can they help these individual companies? Is SMB being impacted much more broadly, for example, than the big companies, which I suspect, but we have quantifiable, actionable data. Because guess what? If your vehicles are sitting and they're not moving, you're not doing any work, you're not able to pay your salaries. If your vehicles are out and you're doing work, we can easily assume that you are active and you're busy and you're productive. And so I think we play an important part in providing that data for the authorities to try and help everybody get out of this, COVID situation.
That's a great place where we are today, and it's obviously incredibly relevant today where we are. Let's take a glimpse back 20 years ago, because some of the decisions that you made or we made as a small management team 20 years ago as the foundation principles of how Geotab was going to do its business, I think maybe led to some of our successes. So I would like to sort of reflect on the history of Geotab now. I'm going way, way back to your early principles of what is Geotab's focus as a company. What was your vision for Geotab 20 years ago, and how are we doing on that scorecard?
Okay, this takes us back. It's interesting. I mean, we all, come from humble roots, and, we started Geotab really working out of the basement. And honestly, when we first immigrated to Canada, the original intention behind Geotab was to help the family have something to do. And we had the birthplace of Geotab in South Africa started before. We thought, it'd be interesting to see whether, there's an opportunity in North America for Geotab. And that's really where it started. But because the focus was on family, other than, a few key select, employees, like Conan was one of the original folks that joined the company. We wanted to keep the company really small. And we said, look, we want to focus on the most valuable part of what we do. We want to outsource everything to keep it lean and mean and focused. So we outsourced, for example, our sales and marketing. So we set up a network of folks that were resellers that would then sell the products. We did things like outsourced our office space eventually when we, got kicked out of the basement because, Tammy wanted her house back. It's like time to go now. So when we went there, it was outsourced office space. And, so we didn't have to manage the copiers and, and the reception desk and the coffee and everything else. And then the manufacturing and logistics side of it as well. We completely outsourced that. And what that did is it forced us to focus on the most valuable elements of the ecosystem, so that we focused on the software and the high value, and in addition, we had a really strange way of measuring the success of the company. It was broken down into profit per person rather than profits. Now, everybody, nobody in their right mind would measure it that way, and we did. You should really measure profit. If you have to hire another person and you can increase your profit, of course, hire the other person. But because we wanted to stay lean and mean, we didn't do that. And that kind of forced that thinking. So there was one interesting decision point. Now, it was made for maybe the wrong reasons, if you like, but it ended up with a consequence today, which is we have this incredible ecosystem of companies making a lot of money out of Geotab and vested in the success and the future of Geotab. And that's incredibly important because that's in the interest of our customers. Our customers want to have choice. They want to have a large variety of systems that work well with Geotab, and they want to use the Geotab to, in all the areas of their business. So I think that was one interesting decision. I mean, along the way, there's various other, points that you make. Our focus as a company, the way we run the company on integrity, is really important as well. I think that we don't care about money. Money is secondary to us. Now, obviously, money is a good scorecard in the long run for how well are you doing. Okay. And, if you're doing a good job and you're making an impact and you really are beneficial to customers, you're going to make money. And that's the way we look at it. We say, we're not here to make money. We're here to have an impact. And we can measure ourselves every now and then and make sure that the money is looking after itself. And it does. Like if you do the right thing for customers, the money does look after itself. So that has been our focus. And what that translates into directly is when we deal with customers, and I remember this example, one of our very, very large fleets, which we kind of get together with annually or so, a conversation that we had with the fleet manager, the global fleet manager, when we came down for one of those reviews. And Mike, we go into the room, and one of the first things that Mike's happy to see us, we've flown down, and he says, I want to tell you, we're super excited. Your Geotab device is so incredible on all our trucks. We want to put it on all our trailers. And he's like, yeah, it's a lot of trailers, right? There's 100,000 trailers plus whatever the number is. And, he's excited. He's got a smile on his face, and he's like really enthusiastic. And he could see my face drop a little bit and, looking a little bit sad. And I said, Mike, you know what? I really, really appreciate that. That's wonderful. But I have to be honest with you that, our product is not the right product for you for trailer tracking. It is not optimized for things like power consumption. It doesn't have a battery. There were, the sensors, everything else was wrong. And I said to him, I know, some of our competitors have a great product. We'll help, find that product. We'll make sure that it works with you. But I don't want to sell you the wrong thing. And you know what? He appreciated that. He took that to heart, and years later, he reached out to Colin and I when there was an issue in one of the international deployments where things were going a little bit wrong, and he never forgot. And that integrity, I think, carries a huge amount of weight. And so that's the family values that go along with, a family business, I think, form part of that. And so, that's the focus on technology as well. We are a very, very engineering focused management by measurement kind of company. I think all of those things kind of combined together, and they were early decisions. And it's funny how, you'd look at the company and say, well, has the culture of the company changed in ways? Obviously, as more people join the company, it's hard to keep, that culture completely tight. But I'll tell you it still permeates through everything that we do. It doesn't take people, to be here very, very long before they start thinking the same way. It's like long-term thinking. It's like, let's do the right thing. It's like management by measurement and whatever. So yeah, it's funny how things work, that history, I never at school liked history. And my dad was, Neil, you got to be well-rounded. You are a math and science geek, and I'm sorry, you need to make a bit of an effort here to go and take history to grade 12. And it's like, okay, and trusted my dad. And I took some history, and I hated learning all those facts. But I'll tell you, when I reflect back on it today, you just look at what's happening in the world. You look at circumstance, even, just looking at COVID and, the other epidemics that have happened before that. I do think it's important, maybe it's a lesson that you learn as you get older, that history has a big impact on today and the future. And we just have to be able to understand that, to be able to take advantage of that.
It's funny when you mentioned the trailer tracking scenario, and I vividly remember that conversation years ago. I also recall when we first began, we weren't a cellular enabled device. It was what was called a passive device that logged data, and you had to transfer it, the information from the vehicle trip into the computing environment. I remember it was an RS-232 port that we had to use to do that. If people listen to podcasts don't know what RS-232 is anymore, Neil. But talk about being hardware agnostic, because you're right. Our Go device itself isn't optimized for trailer tracking without a battery. But you said to me a long, long time ago, Colin, it's not about the hardware. It's about the data that comes from the hardware. So just talk to me a bit about your thoughts around being hardware agnostic and the value that Geotab devices produce. We have some amazing technology in our own devices, but with connected car coming up as well in the future, and there are some outstanding technologies for things like trailer tracking. Just give me your thoughts on being hardware agnostic.
Yeah, you know what? It goes back to keeping the focus on the right things. And it's very, very easy when you start developing a lot of competencies in different areas in the business to say that that's what the business is. It's that competency, and it's wrong. What we need to keep reminding ourselves is, why are we here? And we're here to solve customers' problems, and we need here to solve them in the best possible way that is in the best interest of the customer longer term. And so, when we first started with Telematics, we could see the benefit that Telematics could bring to fleets. We were passionate. We still are passionate about why you need Telematics. It's such an easy product to sell because, you can easily demonstrate how this is going to make things safer and better and more productive and save you money. And it's easy. And, making sure that we never forgot why we do something. So, for example, hardware. In those early days, we had to use hardware to solve that problem. We couldn't just, everybody was saying, why would you want to get in hardware? Everybody knows hardware is not the game you want to get in. We're not in hardware. We're in whatever it takes to solve the customer's issue. And we needed hardware at that time. Now, as things have progressed, in many cases, the OEMs, the vehicle manufacturers are building hardware into the vehicles. In many cases, there's specialized pieces of hardware from, companies that used to be our competitors in the old days that, are partners now, companies like Clamp. And, asset tracking companies, Skybits, and that really have specialized products that are super to install in vehicles. And asset tracking, for example, or trailer tracking. And so the vision for the future is, let's just make sure that the customer doesn't have to work in 5 different systems where, okay, I'm doing my asset track. Which system was that again? Go there. And then there's no uniform set of maps and rules and you got to have all these different logins. No, it's tied into one system. All of those products that are integrated into my Geotab can take advantage of the marketplace, everything that goes along with it. And so we want to become that, fabric, if you like, of, connected vehicle, connected things, so that we can move the data around and we can make it easy for customers just to plug things in and it works. And then they can leverage all of the software analytics and marketplace for all of the devices. So I think, that's kind of the key piece. Now, obviously, there's some innovation that we can do on the hardware side. We still continue to do so. 3G device that you can plug into your port. We've been innovative. We're the only company in the world that has the IOX capability, where it's a modular add-on approach. And so we've done some stunning things that I think are innovative. And while we can continue to add some innovation there, I think I'd love to see some of those innovations transferred to open standards. We would love to see the IOXs, the standards around IOX, be available in every single Ford and GM and other vehicles as an open standard. Toyota's as an open standard, where you can just plug in these devices and you can leverage the whole marketplace by just adding support for this device. I think the future does belong to this working closely together. It's co-opetition is the new term, right? It is, you may have a competing product to us, but that's okay. Come in and work with us, and you stick to what you get and we'll stick to what we good at, and we'll all work together as partners, and 1 + 1 = 3, right? It's not a zero-sum game. If we do this well, it's not me taking business from you or you taking business from me. It's like when we combine together, we can all be more successful.
Yeah, you named a couple of terrific milestones there with the launch of Go 5, the first what we call plug and play device that made connecting or installing the technology simple. Anyone can install a device if you just take the thing and put it into the OBD2 port or the CAN bus port in the truck. And then the IOX technology. Are there any other milestones that you're particularly proud of over the last 20 years that, whether it's an innovation or development or occurrence that happened to Geotab that just particularly resonates in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, there are many of them, and most of them, for me anyway, fit a little bit on the engineering side, maybe a little bit of the business side. I mean, there are a couple of things if we sit back today and we look at telematics and we look at, our own company, and the things that the company does today are obvious. Like, for example, we're a software as a service company and we sell our hardware at cost. We also believe in analytics and the open approach and ecosystem. A lot of those things, even cloud, a lot of those things today look obvious. But let me tell you, when you transport yourself back to 2000, right, and, still there were dial-up modems around, and, some of the examples of companies that were like, I'm never, ever moving my data to the cloud. It's insecure. I don't have control over it. It's not happening. And, you get other examples of some of the large companies that we deal with that said, I'm sorry, we do not, as a company, do subscription. We will pay an upfront fee and it's capitalized and that's it. We're not doing it any other way. And the fight that we had to get there, and even our own product, like the product was birthed as a desktop product that you had to use I remember the floppy disk that you had to insert and install, and it was all running locally, and it was, building that software. And then we knew the web was coming, but how do you take something that you've invested, hundreds of thousands of hours in building a desktop application, and now you have to transport that to the web, and you realize the web's the future. And now you've got to kind of do this weird bridge world where we were trying, it took us 4 years or so to actually migrate the product from being that desktop product into the cloud. And we had to still sell in the meantime and keep customers happy. We couldn't just pause the universe and we'll go away for 4 years. So those are the things that were challenging. Those are the things that I think made the difference at Geotab. We're constantly changing our product and improving it. The change of business model to software as a service was a very tricky one. It wasn't without, giving up all that upfront money and you're focusing on the recurring revenue, and we're month to month. So, Geotab as a company has to earn the rights. Our resellers can do whatever they want, but as a company, we have to earn the rights. And so that's an interesting one. And then the focus on data science and the big data side was a leap of faith. Like, we spent a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of effort. And then, even the decision to grow the company at the right time is a hard one. You take a little bit of a leap of faith. So, all these milestones, touch wood, we learned some valuable lessons along the way, and these mistakes make you stronger. Like, I think every time you make a mistake, you learn from it. And so the mistakes are probably the more important milestones.
It's interesting we talk about milestones. I think we're probably living through a period right now that when we look in the future, we'll look back and we'll think this is a milestone period. We actually don't know like how we are going to get through the milestone, right? Are we all going to be working from home and no more offices 5 years from now? Or this is a milestone moment. We're living through it and we're kind of inventing and evolving, staying agile as we get through this moment. So it will be interesting to see, years from now, looking back into 2020 and how all businesses, even our customers' businesses, are relevant. But if you've always said, the data is the future, and, people have said in the publications that data is the new oil. Maybe you can crystallize that idea. Just like what in a sentence or two, or crystallized concept, what is Geotab's future? What would your vision for the next 5 years of Geotab be?
Okay. So, to kind of tie those two thoughts together, kind of COVID and data. One of the things that we, for example, doing on the COVID side, not just using the data to help, outside customers like, the states and the cities figure out where the recovery is coming from. But we're using it internally to try and help us be better at working from home. So we produce a lot of surveys. We analyze a lot of data on the back end to really understand, like, how productive are we? What are we spending our time doing? How can we do things better? Do we need to help people out, give them, buy them some desks and chairs at home? Are they comfortable? Do they have a problem looking after their kids? And even with something like the response to COVID, data has driven all of the decisions and is driving all of the decisions that we make all the way down the line. And having that data is critical for us to make good decisions. We can have a gut feel. We can say, yeah, people are working okay from home. But the survey that goes out that says, how's your mental state working from home? Do you have kids that you need to look after? Do you have somebody at home that, is vulnerable and you need to be able to stay at home? Like, data drives decisions. And if I didn't ask those questions, how on earth would we be able to know what the right response is? And I think the world is starting to realize that, that the decisions you make in business, the winners are driving those decisions based on good data. And data is not easy because there's a couple of elements to data. One is, how do you collect the data? So that's what a Geotab device is, for example, for transport data. But there's hundreds of data points, right? In your production, how you're producing, what you're doing. It's the systems that drive all of that. You need to get the data from different sensors from all the areas in your business and kind of put them in one place. So, data is the important piece to be able to drive the big data. And so this concept of data being the new oil, somebody actually said that that's the wrong analogy because when you use oil, it's gone. Right? And that's not the case for data. Right? Data is one of those magical things where, I can use a little bit of your vehicle data and I can help, New York City reprioritize the traffic and get them back on track or whatever the case is, build a new road. And the customer can use the data, and nobody hurts one another by being able to leverage the data. Obviously, there's dangers associated with data, with privacy and whatnot. But if you're honorable and you do the right thing, data is beneficial. So one of the challenges with data is, how do you price it? Like, economics work on money. Money is not a dirty word here. Like, really, money is, the driver of economics. It's people's time and attention is just money translates into effort and time and attention. And so we have to be able to figure out how to price that. And that's really the problem with data, is pricing it. Because, for example, if I know that there is going to be rain, outside this afternoon, I might cancel my pickleball match so I know where I am. But if, on the other hand, I'm running a concert or something and I need to go and hire the tent, and I might have to refund hundreds of thousands of dollars because people are not there. So it is really important to know that, one data point to one customer can be totally different to another customer. And being able to price it, which is what you should be able to do, is impossibly hard. And that's what's, in a way, holding back the scaling of data. And that's why I think data might be a lot more open. The models around data become a lot more open in that there'll be lots of free data. And it's aggregating the data and using the data. That's where the value is going to come from, and the machine learning and the people who can understand the data science behind it. And that's why we're investing so heavily on the data science side. But for sure, one way or the other, data is the future for all of our companies.
Okay, so now, and I certainly get that. Thank you for that answer. I just love the answer. From a prediction, I'm going to ask you for your crystal ball prediction. And I know I've worked with you long enough to know that you don't believe in crystal balls, and you don't believe in predictions, and you don't believe in forecasts. You believe in work, in that results come from work and focus. but give me an idea about how the world will change, in your opinion, the telematics world specifically, our industry, how it may change as a result of COVID-19. What are the possibilities in your mind?
Yeah. So for sure, I think that in the long run, that COVID is probably going to have a positive effect on everything IT related. And we're seeing that already to some extent, in the sense that the big IT companies like the Googles and the Microsofts and the Apples of the world, let alone the Amazons, which is now delivering all of your parcels, they impact the brick and mortar retail companies, and everything is moving much more online. I was amazed to see, I had a call with a big customer of ours today, and I remember having the same call with them maybe 2 months ago, and everything was phone line, talk, right? When I had the call with them today, it was Zoom. Everybody was up and everybody was looking at each other's faces. And there is going to be significant cultural change that is going to mean we're going to travel less. We're going to do business much more efficiently remotely. We're going to have things like online conferences where, we even talked about that today. Like Geotab is going to do an internal conference, a developer conference. We even talked about potentially redeploying the events team that used to do physical events to going, well, why don't they help us do a world-class, we'll start with an internal conference for developers on and manage that and run it and all the systems and make it really world-class, and we can send people t-shirts and whatever we want to do. And then we'll translate that to, okay, now we're going to do that for a customer event, and it's all going to be remote. And so I think that's going to be, one of the big impacts. In terms of management by measurement, I think this is just going to accelerate that trend. It's literally data, being able to make smart decisions, focus on IT. There's going to be a trend all the way across the world towards it. So one of the things we're a little bit worried about is the impact of this on the economy. I don't think it's particularly clear. I don't subscribe to the stock market thinking that this is a V-shaped recovery and we're out of the woods yet. We're not. This is going to hurt some companies, and there's going to be a bit of a slow recovery. And in good times and in bad, telematics becomes important, right? In good times, you've got money to invest, you want to do these projects. And in bad times, you need to manage and monitor, and you need to make sure you don't have too many vehicles that you're not using, and you need to make sure you're efficient in how you deploy your resources. So I feel like telematics will be strong both in good times and in bad. And so, we certainly have a bright future, as do our partners. We hope that, the COVID situation, isn't a bad one that lingers, and we hope that everybody gets through it okay. And, at least we're seeing some optimism and things going in the right direction. But yeah, that would be my predictions for that.
Neil, thank you so much for the generosity of your time today, sharing your ideas. It's been a brilliant conversation with you. And, thank you for, the candidacy. You're always very candid. You're always very transparent in your thinking, and I think that's part of our culture, and I really appreciate you sharing that with everyone who'll be listening. And I want to thank our listeners here for listening to Connected with Geotab. And to stay up to date with Geotab and just food industry news in general, go to geotab.com/blog. We have an awful lot of fantastic information written by thought leaders there, including our COVID-19 dashboards and infographics that you can source. Also visit the Geotab community at community.geotab.com for crowd shared advice from yourself, your own peers that might be watching or listening to this podcast today. So please join with us. Tune in again for the next Connected with Geotab, and we look forward to that. Once again, Neil, I want to thank you very, very much for your time.
Thank you, Colin. Appreciate it.
Thank you.